So real quick, I actually recorded this back in 2019 and I didn't have time to edit it until now, but I do love these markers a lot and I love coloring with them, and I've bought a couple other sets after this. Okay, on with the video. Today I'm going to be testing out and playing with the long-awaited Ohuhu brush tip alcohol markers. These markers are $40 and come in a set of 48 colors. With the coveted and much loved brush nib, we have the color key and this plastic page protector thing that I'm not going to be using because it's all creased and curling up, but normally you would just slide this behind your sketchbook page that you're coloring on and then it wouldn't bleed through. As you can see, they have a brush nib on one side and the chisel on the other, and something that's very cool about these is the caps have a little tab on them, and so they don't roll across your desk. While swatching them, something that I noticed is that the caps are very accurate to the swatch color. A lot of times they're not very close at all, but I found that for these ones, the majority of them were actually pretty close. The one complaint I would have is that while it's a good selection of color, there's not a lot of really pale colors, and there's not a lot of really dark colors. There's a ton of mid-tone though. Like I mentioned, this set of markers was $40 and you got 48 markers, which makes each marker about 83 cents, which is super good for an alcohol marker and phenomenal for one with a brush tip. For example, a Copic marker is usually about $5 to $8 per marker, but they are refillable. Once you buy the refill separately, those are another $5 to $8, but then you can refill your marker about 6 times. Whereas for the Ohuhus, as of right now at least, they're not refillable and they don't currently have an option where you can buy just one marker. So while the Ohuhus are really cheap, if there's a color you really like, once you've used it up, your only option is to buy another set of markers. Now, this is not the first Ohuhu marker set that I have purchased. Last year I bought their 80 pack, which had a bullet tip and a chisel tip. I was curious if there was an overlapping colors between their older pack and the new, more limited colored brush pack, and so I did some test swatches, and also apparently the 80 set was also about $40, which I think makes each marker about 40 cents, which is phenomenal for an alcohol marker. There was a bit of color overlap, but for whatever reason, they decided to change the naming convention between the two marker types. On the non-brush tip side, they have a number, just a number. However, on the brush tip ones, they have a name and a number color, similar to how Copic markers are. So ones that have a YR on them are going to be yellow-red, ones that have a P will be purple. To test the markers out, I have 3 small pieces of cardstock, and I thought that it would be fun to just play around and have fun while testing them out. For the first piece, I was browsing Pinterest and came across this dress from the 1999 Yves Saint Laurent collection, and I thought that it was very pretty and I wanted to draw it. These markers are so juicy, and they are very vibrant and very pigmented. They went down without too much streakiness. Honestly, there is some streakiness on the paper, but I think that's because I'm not using the right paper for the tool, so that's an error on my side versus the markers. The brush tips are also a really nice level of firmness. I have some of the Blick brush markers and some of the Art and Fly alcohol markers, and they both have really soft nibs, which makes them a little bit more difficult to get precise lines with, and sometimes it just feels weird to draw with them. Now, unfortunately, all alcohol markers are not completely light fast and they're not archival grade, so this art's not gonna last through the ages in a museum or anything, but it will last through this afternoon of me having fun. Now, for the art, I wanted her to be very soft looking, so instead of doing a sketch, then line art, then coloring, I decided to do the sketch, lift it up with the kneaded eraser to lighten the lines, and then I started coloring the skin and hair. After I was done with that, I decided to go in with a brown Ohuhu felt pen, question mark. They're water-based pens that Ohuhu made, and I got them for bullet journaling, so they are not waterproof, they are not smudge-proof. Normally I would have just used my sepia Copic multi-liners, but I didn't know where they were at this point in time, so I just grabbed the next best thing. I also used a dark purple Ohuhu pen. For the flowers, I was trying to both use a variety of pinks and reds, and also I didn't want to spend forever on the roses because these were supposed to be quick marker doodles, so I laid down the base colors, and then after letting them dry for a bit, I went over them with a white Posca pen to give the illusion of petals. Over the years, I think the best trick I've ever learned for roses is if you just make a blob and add a few lines, you can trick people into thinking that you're good at drawing roses. And with that, my first drawing is done. Now, unfortunately for the second drawing, I lost the footage for the first 90% of it, but the process was the exact same. I started with a sketch, lightened it up with a kneaded eraser, and then proceeded to start layering the markers. For this drawing, I decided to draw one of my original characters. This is Cerise. I love her, and her design actually came about as a result of me trying to do a one marker challenge. For the line work, I tried to do some of it with one of the brush markers as opposed to using a multi-liner, and for this one I think it worked out pretty good. It is impressive how thin of a line you can get with these markers. I was having a lot of fun, so I just kind of kept going back to this picture, and I kept adding more shading here, adding more sparkles there. I honestly lost track of time with this second drawing, and I wish I could show you more of it, because of the 3 that I did for this little test, this was hands down my favorite one. Now, this third drawing, this one was in the ugly stage for a long time. I had to trust the process, but it was very touch and go there for a bit. I wanted her to have a darker skin tone, and instead of doing it like I normally would have, which would have been to start with a lighter color and then darken it by layering, I started by adding what would be the darkest parts of her skin first, and then blending it with increasingly lighter colors. As you can see, I was not sure about this technique, so I started with her body instead of her face. Once I was satisfied that this technique was going to work and wasn't a huge mistake, I decided to continue on with it. Once I felt like I had the hang of it, I moved on to her face, and I was so nervous the entire time because I didn't want to ruin the face, or else the drawing would be ruined and I would have to completely start over. Now, for reasons that are still unknown to me, I decided that I wanted her to have purple hair, purple eyes, and purple lips. So, after laying down the bases for all of those, I also used this medium purple marker to do some more shading on her skin, and then I used a darker purple to start with some line work. I truly felt like every time I touched a marker to this drawing, I was ruining it even more. But I kept going. I knew that at some point it would emerge from the ugly stage, like a beautiful caterpillar emerging from its cocoon, but it wasn't the time for that just yet. I had to just keep layering on markers and hoping for the best. After playing around with these markers all day, I can say confidently that they are really nice markers, especially for the price. If you have been wanting to start using alcohol markers in your art and didn't know where to start, or you didn't want to commit to the price point of Copics, these are a really good inexpensive introduction to alcohol markers, and they are also really nice in general because if, like me, you've got a lot of big gaps in your marker collection, it helps to fill in some of the spaces. For example, I tend to gravitate more towards browns, reds, pinks, and purples, so it is nice to have a few more colors at my disposal now because I only had maybe 2 yellow markers and also maybe only about 3 orange markers before this. Which, speaking of yellow markers, I thought that yellow would be a nice complement to the purple hair and the darker skin tone. Since she was so happy looking, I thought that a warm, bright yellow would also match the mood. Then, after adding a little bit of blush, a little bit more shading, and some pops of highlights with my beloved white Posca, she's finally out of the ugly phase and she is looking so cute and I love her so much, but it was a long, arduous journey to get here. I also added some flower details to her hair to complement the first drawing's flowers. And then, in a bold move, I decided that she needed a background, and what better background than a bright green square. The first stroke made me immediately regret the decision to add green, but by the end, I think that it was a nice bright complement to these beautiful purple and brown tones. I did have to be very careful around her hair, because mixing purple and green would have combined to make a very unique color, which I did not want to be obvious in her hair. And here we are! These are the 3 drawings I did using the Ohuhu brush tip markers. Which one is your favorite? Mine still has to be the second one. And with that, I hope that you all have a good day. I'm gonna go and make some more marker drawings. Bye!